Okay, our next substitute speaker in this time is substituting for Dennis Maness, James Golik. James is president of Quantum Balancing Corporation in Colorado Springs. This is an energy healing and radiobiology outfit, and he's been doing this for over 30 years. He's a semi-retired pilot. Let's welcome James Golik.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I did want to mention that since you all are here as attendees, I came as an attendee too and was asked to do this today, and I have done speaking on this particular subject in the past, and I was not prepared to do this today, but I think you'll find it very interesting. But since this is a conference on the subject of Tesla, and it's a TeslaTech conference, my area of interest in this technology has been based on a quote of Nikola Tesla, which is, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration, and we might even add today resonance, because that seems to be a synergistic effect of the others. Tesla, in my opinion, and I'm sure in all of yours, was the greatest scientist of all. But a lot of the things that he worked with maybe were predated by ancient technologies too, that they were trying to use these same kind of principles in ancient times. And Danae Harding earlier did a presentation on the Platonic solids and sacred geometry and so on. Well, there is a body of evidence to show that these kinds of topics were used in ancient times, and that they were used for an unknown body of purposes that we're still trying to sort out today and can't quite understand. I have had a fascination with Egypt and the Egyptian technologies. I'm sure many of you have too. And maybe we'll never solve this problem or issue of what were the pyramids really for? What were they actually doing in Egypt? But I'm going to show you some very interesting things today based on over 30 years of research that I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want to show you 30 years of research into some very interesting energies and technologies that you may not be aware of. And some of these things, if you have companies, you're doing your own research, you might take some of these ideas that we found and be able to incorporate them in some of the things that you're doing, and even in practice and so on. As I will say that we're not the only one doing this, it's just simply an area of interest. But the particular area of interest that we're looking at is being explored by a number of researchers in Russia specifically, St. Petersburg, and also throughout the world and the United States, and we're just one of many. So we're all working to sort this out. And after a number of trips to Egypt, and everyone's fascinated by the pyramid and the Sphinx, we began, along with others, looking at the figures. And when you look at a figure like this and you actually see how large a lot of these Colossus statues are, you think, what would it take to carve this? How long would it take? What kind of technology, tools? And if you were going to spend however long it took to carve these huge, huge statues, what message were you trying to convey to the person who would be looking at this technology at some point in time? Because probably like you, when you visit museums and you ask curators and you ask scholars about these kinds of things, you get answers like, well, they were grinding corn, they were making bread. And I've never believed those kinds of things. I think there was maybe some sort of higher purpose to what these technologies were being used for than mundane day-to-day things. As you look at these Colossus statues, you're going to start to notice a pattern. And some are in museums, some are out in the Egyptian landscape. Some have been restored, some have not. But when you look at this, you're going to start to, again, see a pattern. And as you look at it, you say, what is that saying to me? What what's really going on here with this technology? And I say technology because maybe a person looking at that's going to say, well, where's the technology? Well, a question you might ask as you look at that, and you might say, well, this is interesting, but what are they holding in their hands? Someone has gone through a fair amount of work and thought to carve this statue, and yet many of them are depicted holding objects that they seem to be using in some way. This one I put in, no one really knows what to think about it, but this is the relief in the temple at Abydos, and many people say, well, here's proof of Egyptian technology. That could they have had helicopters, submarines, air cars? It's a very interesting relief, and it's certainly above the, it's about 14 feet above the entrance at the temple of Abydos, and it does make you wonder because they do sort of look like technology that we have today, but again, who knows? It's there. But getting back to many of these statues, and they're both male and female, they are carved in particular positions, wearing headgear, but they're always holding, you know, these things in their hands. What is that? And if you ask Egyptologists or if you ask scholars, you know, what they're holding, the answer is, well, gosh, I never really looked at it that close, but I guess it's a scroll. It must be a scroll because Egyptians are always holding scrolls in their hands, right? We've all seen that. Well, this particular array of statues is quite interesting, and you'll see a number of different photographs of this particular array. The interesting thing is that in Egypt, they are faced a particular direction, the majority of them, not all of them, and they're always standing on a block, and they're holding the objects in their hands, and almost always they're standing with their left foot forward. And if you look at that, it sort of says power, doesn't it? When you look at that, you think, here is something that you're looking at, a vital human that is sort of radiating energy and power, strength. And this is one of the largest, and you'll see the object in the hand there as well. Little dark here because of the reflection of the light. These are some of the most famous, and the women have them in their hands as well as the men do. Again, not all of them, but primarily the main figure typically has the left foot forward. One of the things we're dealing with here is there's a book called Shape Power that's a very interesting book. And one of the things we're dealing with, I think, is shape power and even using the human body as shape. And what can you do to draw in universal energy, frequency, vibration, resonance, and bring those energies into the body to enhance your, maybe slow down the aging process, maybe enhance strength, and maybe be able to increase your vitality. That's what we think after years and years of working with these and looking at these statues and numerous trips to Egypt and so on, there's no question that they're using a technology that many of you that are in electronics will know, which is called a Voltaia Couple. And a Voltaia Couple is not all, we'll get to this part later, not all of them have the cylinders in both hands because a single cylinder could be used for a different purpose depending on what hand you're using and what you're trying to do with that particular cylinder. A Voltaia Couple works on a principle that if you were to hook up measurements to the body where you could monitor brain waves and minute voltage variances in your body, that if you were to hold on to two separate dissimilar metals, and they could be pretty much any type of metals, but if you hold two dissimilar metals, they're going to create a minute voltage difference or potential in the body. And that voltage potential, the amount of it depends, it seems to depend on the conductivity of the body and how well hydrated you are. And it also seems to depend on the metals used, because obviously some metals are more or less conductive than others. A lot of the statues are missing hands, so we can't really see what was there at the time. The shape power that I'm referring to is that in a study of human energy, it seems to be that, and we may have lost this in our world today, that if you're doing meditation, if you're doing energy enhancement to the body, the standing position that you use, and maybe in the laying position you use, seems to have an effect on how that energy is absorbed in the body. And we believe that that's what the Egyptians were trying to tell us here, that they were standing in a particular position, using a particular technology to accomplish a particular purpose. And if you look at these, there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of these statues. Here's a complete array. And again, they're not all standing, but many of them, as you see, they're wearing various types of headgear, but they're standing in that same position, very erectly with their left foot forward and with their hands at their side. And most of the time, not all the time, they're facing east. They're facing the rising sun in the morning, and many times they're facing the sunset in the evening. And there's a body of evidence that shows that the effect of the sun is much more enhanced. We've all seen beautiful copper golden sunsets and sunrises, but during the day it seems harsh, it seems oppressive. And that's, we believe, what the Egyptians thought also, that in the morning, when that golden copper sun breaks the horizon, what if you could stand in this position on a block of granite or limestone that's extremely conductive? And granite's one of the most electrically active and conductive, a lot of people talk about quartz crystals and that sort of thing. Granite and limestone, they're extremely electrically active in holding and memorizing electrical charges. What if you were to stand on a block in a particular position to accomplish a particular purpose, using a technology and watching in the morning as that sun broke the horizon and looking straight at it and absorbing, what would you say, cosmic radiation, energy, light into the body, eyes wide open, not in all cases. There's meditative poses and there's also active poses as well. Well, in a little bit we're going to get into the subject of what many are calling these Egyptian wands, cylinders, and so on. We're all used to seeing the Great Pyramid. Everybody, you see pyramids set up at shows and people using meditative pyramids over beds and so on. And the pyramid angle is known to be 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 51 seconds. But many people don't know that many of the older pyramids use golden ratios in Egypt, many of the oldest. And the golden ratio pyramids are 72 degrees, and 36 degrees. And there's a body of evidence that these, what we call golden ratio pyramids, may be much more energetically active than your classic Great Pyramid angle of 51 degrees. The reason is because they incorporate the golden ratio, which is the square root of 5, either -1 or +1, depending on what you're doing, divided by 2, which gives you the magic number of 0.618, . And so that golden ratio is a growth ratio that occurs in nature. And these pyramids, well, the slides are a bit out of order because we just put this, like I say, I wasn't scheduled to be here. I'm just showing you some things from my collection. The Russians are building these pyramids now, the 72-degree, 36-degree pyramids, to charge objects and work with energy. This is an interesting example of what may be going on with this technology. These two rods appear to have, they're dissimilar metals, and they appear to have different purposes. And one appears to be what you'd call a male energy, and the other is a female energy. The right hand is designed to enhance the male energetic aspects of the energy system. And so as you look at this, you think, well, that's kind of strange. This appears to be a man, but he has, because of his breasts and so on, and if you look at what it's saying, that he appears to have a little bit of maybe hormonal imbalance or something, where he has a little bit of a feminine characteristics too. So, but it's interesting that he's holding the male rod in his hand, which is designed to enhance the male characteristics of the energy system. And again, as you look at these, look at the poses, look at what they're holding in their hands, look at the technology. We're going to skip through here because I have a very short period of time to show you this. This is one other interesting statuette here too, where you have the two figures holding the outside rod, and then they appear to be radiating an energy toward the third figure with their hands, as in they're absorbing the energy, transferring that energy, and then putting it into another person or object or whatever. Skip through these just so you can get back here a little bit. And these positions, the other positions, may have an effect. I wanted to mention, most of you have seen the famous position of Vitruvian man that's used in a lot of illustrations and so on. That appears to be one of these positions we're talking about. This Egyptian position here of having the left foot forward and holding the rods appears to be one to absorb cosmic energy, to slow down the aging process and enhance overall vitality. This other one, the Vitruvian position, may be for healing work, where you have a specific issue that you're dealing with. Look at the size of these. They're absolutely huge. Now, we've been looking at stone figures, and some of you might say, or maybe scholars might say, well, they're stone. How do we know this is technology, the technology that you're speaking of? Well, it just so happens that this photograph off a video is from the Metropolitan Museum. These are the actual hand cylinders of Pharaoh Pepi II. And when an analysis is done of these hand cylinders, you have a copper cylinder, you have a zinc cylinder, and you have, some of these may be missing. Obviously, somebody may have taken parts of it, but this part here, which corresponds to the copper, is a carbonite type of core. And maybe these cores could have been changed for different purposes. But these are the actual hand cylinders of Pharaoh Pepi II. Copper, zinc. Copper, the sun rod, the right-hand rod, generating masculine qualities, building up the masculine aspect. The zinc rod, the moon rod, zinc, enhancing the feminine aspect. This is one of the 72 degree angle pyramids that the Russians are building to do research into this particular area. You can see they're pretty large. They're serious about this. This particular man is a billionaire, and that's what he's putting his money into. So these are some of the things that we've been looking at for over 30 years. We're not selling these now. You may have access to be able to make some of these yourself, some of the different rods. We have a machinist that works with us. These are a couple example sets that we have built. This showing copper and zinc, of course. and they are very finely machined, and you can substitute the cores with different types of objects, magnetic, crystal, hematite, all kinds of different energetic types of substances can be put in these depending on the kind of work that you're trying to work with and what systems you're trying to enhance. And so the copper rod is typically held in the right hand, the zinc rod in the left hand. And these rods, if measured, and we've done this, if a person is connected to sophisticated measuring equipment that are monitoring the system, the nervous system of the body, as soon as these, you might be watching a graph, as soon as these rods are placed into the hand, the nervous system starts into almost a flat line. It's sort of like it calms you down. It's sort of like it smooths out your nervous system. And so what we think is that these Egyptians were using these technologies, and this is my belief at the current time, that maybe not the common people in Egypt had these. Maybe it was only the elite that had access to this technology. But certainly we believe that they would be standing on a block of granite, connected to the earth, grounded, facing east in the morning and west in the evening, and waiting for that sun to break the horizon. And as soon as it did, they would be standing there with their copper and zinc rods in their hands, awaiting for that sun to come in through their eyes and their skin and create a Voltaia couple with these metals in their hand to normalize their immune system, to keep them vital, healthy, and maybe even slow down the aging process. You know, we think that that's part of it too. So it's been an interesting journey to work with these. We take the rods and walk with them and meditate with them and so on, and it's been a lot of fun to see. We notice extremely wonderful effects as far as smoothing out and normalizing your nervous system to enhance meditation and things of this nature. I wanted just to mention, we got like 1 minute left, the pyramids. What we think, based on what we found through this technology, what were the Egyptians really doing with the pyramids? And you will see information on this coming out in the next year or so in more and more, because it's well known now that you have ionic currents that are coming down vertically from the ionosphere. And then the Earth itself, the surface of the Earth, and the difference between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere, there's an actual frequency, which some call the Schumann. They think it's the frequency of the Earth. It's not correct. It's the frequency between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere. And these ionic currents come down. And then you have other currents that are called equipotentials that are running horizontally. And these equipotential currents running horizontally interact together when they strike a sharp object at an angle, such as a pyramid, such as a Nikola Tesla tower like he built where we live in Colorado Springs. And when these currents meet at these points, they create voltage. The Great Pyramid is 15,000 volts based on the angle, the height, and so on. So they were using voltage for what purpose? It could have been many, but I believe, after looking at this for a long, long time, it was for weather modification, to make it rain, to get water. There may be other esoteric, what's the chamber for and all that, but certainly there's a body of evidence that show that these ionic currents are interacting, causing modification of weather patterns, which then will, in many cases, cause it to rain. I think that's all the time I have. I hope you enjoyed this little sojourn through Egyptian technology. And if you have any questions, I'll be around or upstairs in the vendor area. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, James Golik, thank you very much.